How's that? Can you hear me? Okay, great. I don't know if I can live up to all that praise. My father used to say, "Oh, stop, I'll be getting notions about myself." And that's what it feels like right now. Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to be here. I thought I would start out by reading a poem from each of the poetry books and then read some from the newer stuff that I've been writing. Let's see. I loved what you were saying about poetry in general, Anton, although, again, it's hard for somebody like me to feel I deserve it, but then we were joking today about how self-deprecation is my default setting. I'm trying to grow out of it, but I'm not sure I will at this stage. I thought I'd read this from my old friend Mick, who teaches running and was a runner himself. It's from my first book, and it's called Feet. Taking someone's foot in your hands, you can trace the fault lines where the blue highways of the body intersect. Press a thumb into the sole's hard flesh. Your fingers begin to erase the miles of pavement, the diurnal slap of leather against bone. In the darkness at the back of the church, a child crushes a swollen foot into a delicate First Communion slipper. A groom kneels at the altar in a borrowed suit, forgetful of the newspaper poking through the holes in his black-laced brogues. Prospective relatives kneeling in their pews stare at his supplicant and faithless feet. Suffering is what the feet know best. They carry the body's weight all day and forgive its trespasses against them. Their small bones are bird-like, flightless. They sidestep disaster like waiters balancing their trays. Steadfast and elegant, sturdy as Atlas, the feet go on indefinitely, holding up a world. Let's see, this is from my second book, and I thought I'd read this one because it came from a visit to Sherkin Island and Baltimore down the coast several years ago. But the other reason for this poem is because the street that John and I grew up on in Sallynoggin in Dublin had all of these dogs with the most wonderful names. And we've both written about them in different ways, but all the dogs had their own first name and then the name of the family they belonged to. And there were such great names that, and they belonged to all of us in a way. There were such great names that I just had to put them in a poem. Happiness, the feeling of increasing. Seagulls swooped over the schoolyard when the nuns lined us up in ragged rows to sing hymns and pray for a series of abstractions. The conversion of pagan England, holy purity, and a happy death, while the indiscriminate birds, screeching victory, guzzled our lunches on the fly. Hunger is the best sauce, my mother said, and the dogs on our street were a case in point. Cute as Christians, with two names to prove it, Peggy Ryan and Spot Shepherd, Patch Medlar and Razor Hennessy. Their mismatched parts could make a cat laugh. Agile dodgers of kicks and curses, they could be counted on to manifest themselves whenever food appeared. In those days we knew that County Cavan people ate their dinner from a drawer, and certain Dubliners would eat you without salt for looking crooked. They say the gannets out by Sherkin Island plunge 30 feet to the sea in search of food. In time, the force of the water blinds them, and they starve to death on the rocks, while all around the sounds and smells of what was once their life persist. So too the ravens, pecking at the pile of fur on the soft shoulder of the highway, cawing their contentment to the skies. To all situations where the boundaries between life and death are blurred, remember, life is the one that eats. On a slightly lighter tone, this one I wrote for my brother when I was staying with him over in Rosslare Harbour a few years ago. And he has a wonderful house over there. And it's very different from the one we grew up in. It's called Misty Morning in Wexford. Brambly hedgerows against a grey sky, the trees like old ghosts in the distance, disfigured by wind unceasing off the sea. My brother and I engrossed, listening to the soundtrack of our teens. A Stax Volt, Motown, Van Morrison via Mississippi Delta, talking about my generation compilation that conjures sweaty tennis club dances, pounding rhythms, slow sets and furtive kisses, the sun-tanned glow of our Irish skins in the false romance of ultraviolet light. Here in the house my brother designed, where deep terracotta and warm yellow shadows linger over rich wood doors, I think of our father's restrained palette, the easy-to-clean peach walls and flowered wallpapers that, like his hard work and expertise, never varied. Turn off that damn noise, he used to say, when Procol Harum played A Whiter Shade of Pale, or the Stones sang Painted Black on the Pirate Station. And later, how my brother's newfound tastes took on the very tint of mutiny. I've gotten interested in birds lately, not because I want to be a birder or anything like that, but there's just something about the kind of intersection of these creatures with our lives that got me interested. And so they've been kind of working themselves into different poems. This one, this poem is kind of my recollection of growing up in Dublin in the 1960s. And I was reminded of it when the Vermont Historical Society recently completed a 2-year project called Hippies, Freaks and Radicals about the 1970s Back to the Land movement, which I was kind of part of on the tail end of it. So this is called Spring Comes to a Dying Decade. Here's the housefinch with his flaming breast, the goldfinch yellowing up like a canary, the cardinal fully incarnadined. It must be spring. And it's as if we were back in the early 60s, staring at the static on our tiny black and white TV screens, eating porridge and potatoes in a muted universe, when suddenly it was all brilliant plumage, cuffs like ruffed grouse. Mother wore a woodpecker's red beret. Brother was an icterine warbler in a paisley cravat. Dark-suited men dared to wear pink shirts like shy flycatchers. Even the priest risked a raven black leather jacket and a mood ring. The world turned bottoms up like a tufted titmouse freeloading at the feeder, his raucous squawks asserting what we instantly twigged was mating season. I suppose a lot of my poems come from memory, and especially memories of the way people talk in Ireland, or the way they did when I was growing up. And I've written a lot of poems that have to do with my parents, and I think it's because I'm trying to make up for my sins, because I was the most appalling child you ever saw, and I was an even worse teenager. I drove them mad. So now I write these sort of little homages to them by way of, I don't know, penance or something. Anyway, this one, when I was growing up, probably like most of you, we only had pancakes once a year on Shrove Tuesday. But when I go over to Vermont, they eat pancakes all the time for breakfast every day with lashings of maple syrup, and never heard of Shrove Tuesday. But I was thinking of my mother when I wrote this. The pancake artist. She only cooked them once a year on Shrove Tuesday, so we didn't dwell on the looming Lenten fast as we raced home after school to see her lift down the big black frying pan and heat it over the blue gas burner until the fat spat and sizzled. She'd hoist the milk jug full of batter, pour a creamy stream into the pan, tilting and tipping it to a seamless circle. We hovered famished at her elbow as the humps and craters formed. Brown sienna over khaki, burnt umber over buttermilk. It was all in the timing. One flick of her gifted wrist, and she landed it like a fish on your plate. You rolled it with sugar, a squeeze of lemon, scarfed it down. Then it was back to the end of the queue until your turn returned again. No rest for her aching shoulders until we were all contented sinners, licking our lips as full as eggs. I loved the line in one of your poems, I don't remember which one it was, Latter-day Druids. I thought that was great. In this poem, my cousin Martin, our cousin Martin, lives near Glendalough, and he does tours of Glendalough, frequently dressed up like a druid, and he's kind of the family druid. But anyway, the tours are brilliant. But a few years ago when we were over, he offered to give the family a tour. There were a few other family members as well, and it poured rain, and we were all half drowned by the end of it. This is called Glendalough Sonnet. Rain and relatives, relatives and rain. In Glendalough's monastic town, a jackdaw baby thrusts his downy head out of a round tower putlock and raises an ungodly yellow beak to squawk at gawking tourists snapping cell phones, the spines of their umbrellas dripping on the ancient Boulogne stones, where monks once mixed their potions, and the holy well was rich in lithium, which turned out to be a great cure for the occasional pilgrim who, like me, suffered from the watery weather or a sodden slough of Celtic despond. Talking about the holy wells with my cousin, and he said, "Did you not know they had lithium in the wells here in Glendalough?" And I said, "Oh my God, I should have gotten some of that." And he said, "There isn't enough of it to cure you." This is another kind of, I started reading a lot about folklore and birds and, that sort of thing. And this one has a kind of dark few images at the end. And I wrote it around the time that Donald Trump was coming to power in America, so it's no wonder it's a little bit dark and gloomy. It's called Ravens. In Norse mythology, the twin ravens, thought and memory, flew about the world, collecting news for Odin, who had given them the gift of speech. Did they work together as a team, one forward-thinking, looking out for bloody rumor, thin whisper, foul-smelling allegation, while the other mouthed words and phrases, recited names, reiterated everything? Did they return together, grigged with gossip for the dinner table? Or did thought sometimes muddle memory with unanswerable questions? Can memory be trusted? Does thought delude itself? Do we only live as long as memory wraps us in its wings? Odin feared they might not return, knowing their taste for decomposing flesh, what that vertiginous perspective might reveal. A new god with a dove that whispers in his ear, some new dark truth delivered from the air. These are not very light-hearted poems, I'm sorry to say. Sometimes I'm actually quite amusing, But this one, here's another dark one for you. It's called Tracks. Oh, and I should say that 2 years ago, I broke my wrist on my right hand, and I'm right-handed, so it really threw me for a loop. But it also gave me some time to lie around and think about poetry. And I have a theory that the other side of my brain kicked in and created all these associations. After surgery, the stitch marks look like bird feet walking up my arm. But what strange bird has left its bone-white prints embedded in my wrist like needle tracks? Perhaps it was the raven, that faux sorrowful funeral director, walking beak forward, gloved hands folded behind his back, who walks the twin trajectories of a railway line that leads to a long-defunct station where I might meet myself returning from the beach with two scabbed knees, embossed inoculations against disease, the wheels of ancient injuries like medals from the battlefields of childhood, and my mother's crow's feet inching towards my eyes. I don't know how many of you were around in the time before we knew cigarette smoking was bad for you. I really miss cigarette smoking. I loved it. And I loved all the paraphernalia, although I gave it up decades ago. But and I was a terrible snob. In my teens, I used to buy Gauloise cigarettes and stink up the whole bus with them, And I was full of affectations. But this one is about my father smoking when I was a kid. And there's a mention of the Meath Chronicle. He came from Trim, County Meath. It's called Sweet Aftons. How I loved to watch my father savor his small indulgences. A packet of 10 Sweet Aftons and the Meath Chronicle, the ink still wet on its whispery pages. He would sit in his armchair by the fire, a fragrant cigarette between his fingers, the newspaper open on his lap, reading the news of friends and relations, who had won the All-Ireland hurling match, who had married, who had died. The half-closed packet lay on the table, its gold calligraphy curling over the side. Flow gently, sweet Afton, through thy green braes. Flow gently, I'll sing thee a song in thy praise. It was a message from another continent, like Robert Louis Stevenson's drooping moustache, Nathaniel Hawthorne's high-starched collar, or Louisa May Alcott's elaborate ringlets on the pack of authors' playing cards that Mammy's cousins sent over from America. Or the forlorn lovers separated by a cruel father who gazed at each other from the blue and white world of her willow-patterned plates. A promise of poetry, of mystery, of everything I dreamed about but couldn't name. At Christmas, we save the empty packets to dress in wrapping paper, tie up with ribbons, dangle enticingly from the tree. Beautiful, we thought them who knew nothing of art. Those exquisite mystery boxes, nothing but hope and a puff of air inside. Here's another bird poem. So this poem, my husband Daniel, who's a wonderful poet, says that when two different, disparate things come together, you often have a poem. So this was partly my interest in birds, and also it connected with the memory of my dad, who was a fiddle player all his life. It's called Crow Time, and the epigraph is from the Scientific American. It is said that crows, like other corvids, recognize themselves in mirrors, and this is thought to show intelligence. The last light of a winter's day, thousands of winged forms flap past my windows, pins pulled by a powerful magnet. The sky is black with crows, crying in cracked voices of their plans to steal what is left of the light, to gather their feathered shapes into a solid color jigsaw puzzle of land and lake and sky that will click into place only when the last bird flies into its jagged aperture and darkness falls. Like the crows, my father showed up night after night to take his place in an ancient ritual, to play his fiddle not by standing out, but by fitting in with the other men. Those dark-suited bus drivers and conductors who brought to the session all their quirks and oddities. Mr. Ward with his head thrown back, the accordion at rest on his round belly. Mr. Kyo with his albino eyes, long fingers sawing the fiddle, and young Tony in short trousers tootling away on the tin whistle. Now my father too is part of that collective darkness, the puzzle that the crows remake each night. The dawn, like a wayward child, scatters joyfully each morning.
No, keep going. Oh, keep going.
Some of the people have a turn. No. Go on. You go on. One more.
Oh, yeah.
God help us. Let's see.
Read my favorite.
Oh God, this is favorite one. That's terrible. I suppose I'll have to do that then. On a lighter note, let's see if I can find it. Oh God, there's the wretched thing. Now you're putting me on the spot. Where was the wretched thing? It's got to be here somewhere. Oh, here we are. There's a shop in Burlington where I live that's a sort of old-fashioned ladies' underwear shop. And I didn't realize when I went in there that it was for large sizes. So I was a bit misplaced. Anyway, this is called One Size Fits All. In the ladies' underwear shop, I paw through piles of padded, push-up, polka-dotted, wired and wireless contraptions in search of the smallest size. There's the Wonder Bra with its intricate ropes and pulleys, the Sports Bra, first cousin to the whalebone corset, the Jog Bra, an ace bandage for minimizing bounce, as if I ever needed minimizing. I'm sure the shop assistant has a look of pity in her eyes. I want to ask her if she knows what it was like to be 15 and to wonder why your chest was flat as a skillet while your mother's flesh oozed over its lacy restraints like a soft dough newly risen. The assistant measures me expertly and delivers her verdict. Size 36 AA cup. We'll have to order one for you, she says, praising my insufficient torso. AA, the scarlet letter. I imagine poor Hester Prynne condemned to wear her shameful cup size on her chest as punishment for Pearl's existence. We're interrupted by a phone call. Someone needs size H, but double D is as far as they go. Another special order to add chagrin to my sin of self-regard. At home, I reveal my digital destiny to my husband. She's wrong, he says stoutly. You're not a AA. These hands don't lie.
That was really enjoyable. I don't, you have some dark prose in your poems, but your sense of humor and your irony and self-deprecation, I don't know. I mean, you seem to be weaving in and out of darkness, light, and lots of color.
Yeah.
I was wondering, you left Ireland because you seem to be living in two worlds, is that true?
Absolutely.
I mean, here, are you more Irish here, or are you more Irish in Vermont?
That's the big question, It's something I'm fascinated by. I'm fascinated by all of the people who've gone from one culture to another, and it's such a mix, in some ways, I was thrilled to leave Ireland, and then I was horribly homesick once I got to America. And then I've been, sometimes I feel like I don't belong anywhere, but when I come back here, gradually it starts to feel familiar. It's as if they're two planets,
What is it like to feel more Irish here? I'm not Irish, as you can hear. So how would you describe or define or pinpoint your Irishness?
For me, it's all about the words, the way people talk. It feels like a feast of language when I come back here, and just all kinds of expressions and words that people don't use over there. But also, it's about context, because I sound very American over there. I suppose I sound American to you, but it's the kinds of words that you use, the way you speak, that's what it's about for me.
Yeah, because I noticed when you first talked to me, you sounded much more American than up here. So, do you think you try to adapt? Do you feel the need to adapt?
I think when I was young, I met my first husband when I was only 18. He was an American, and all his family, they were all expatriates living in Dublin. And I think I was self-conscious and sort of ashamed of where I came from. So I'm sure I tried to do that. Also, my father sent me to elocution classes so I wouldn't sound working class, which was a terrible thing to do in retrospect. But there was a lot of that shame there, But anyway.
you said you work with your husband, or you work. I mean, you're both poets.
Yes.
So, I mean, is there any rivalry between you, or are you just? I mean, sorry.
No, that's perfectly fine.
Or do you
No.
help each other? I mean, how do you deal with that?
Well, when I first met him, I thought that we were going to have this wonderful time critiquing one another's work. The first time he read me a poem and I offered something, he said, "No, don't want to hear about it." It's like, I know what I'm doing, I don't need your input. I was shocked and taken aback. But the fact is we write very different kinds of poems, as you'll hear, and we're really not competitive with each other. I think I can honestly say that we're delighted when the other person gets something published or has some success. But then he's been married so many times that he can probably, he's probably laid that to rest a long time ago.
So whole new books, we won't go there.
Yeah.
You were talking about your youth in Dublin. It was a big family.
Well, it's funny nowadays where I live, people have 1 or 2 kids. And my mother was always apologizing because she only had 4 children. It was such a small family. But she didn't get married until she was 35. So God knows how many of us there would have been had she met my father earlier. So it was only 4 of us.
Can you say anything about Vermont from a poetic? I mean, as I said, I saw pictures on your Facebook page with lots of snow, which seems very poetic. But how does it influence you in terms of poetry?
Well, there are lots
Apart from
of...
the brass.
Sorry?
Apart from the brass.
Oh, the brass, yes. By the way, I'm not actually a double A. I went to another shop and they said it was all wrong. But anyway, Vermont, it's a bit like Ireland in that there's a poet or an artist under every rock, and there's lots of poets. And of course, it was also the home of Robert Frost, though New Hampshire and Vermont both claim Robert Frost as their poet. He was actually born in San Francisco, and there's a lot of poetry there. There's a lot of kind of tradition, and I don't know. I really like a lot of American poets, and I've been teaching poetry, so I've used a lot of American poets, but not necessarily Vermont poets so much. But it's very rural, and it's a lovely place, but it doesn't have the sea, and so I miss that about it. Yeah.
Moonlight in Vermont.
Oh, exactly. Moonlight in Vermont.
Okay. Anyone else wants to ask her some questions? She has lovely answers. Yeah.
When did you leave Salinaga?
I went to America in 1977. And hopped off with my husband was a draft dodger. He got drafted when he was 19, and he went to Ireland because he had an aunt and uncle here, Americans. And he stayed for 10 years. And then it was sort of his turn when they gave an amnesty for the draft dodgers. So we went over in 77. Yeah.
Anyone else? Thank you very much. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you so much.
I'm just going to hijack the stage for one
Oh,
minute.
please,
I
do, indeed.
I just want to make an announcement, if that's okay with Anton, who is the master.